Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by two special guests. They are the co-founders of Suffer to Tougher and life coaches, Mr. Kelsey Dunbar and Mr. Marc Rogala. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having us.
Hey,
Doing
it's my
wonderful.
pleasure. I'm kind of excited about the name of this business and where this came from.
Yeah, actually I'm gonna let Marc take this one. He came up with the name before we even started working together, but I loved it so much that the renaming wasn't even necessary. Go for it, Marc.
No, it's fair. Again, thank you for having us, Ryan. So I'm in recovery. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic in recovery, and I'm what you call a dual diagnosis patient. So I have underlying mental health diagnosis as well as PTSD, general anxiety, major depressive disorder. It was a ride to get to sobriety and get into recovery. And once I got into recovery, once I was sober for about a year, I wanted to get active in the recovery world and actually speak at hospitals and share hope and inspiration. Because when I was hospitalized coming off of a major overdose the last time, there was a gentleman that shared his live life experience in 45 minutes when I was in psychiatric care. And literally, he changed my life in 45 minutes. I mean, the day that I overdosed was the last day that I used any mind altering substances. So I was sober for about a year, started speaking at hospitals, started getting active in local organizations called like NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. And quite frankly, started being open and honest and transparent on Facebook. And I always thought that I was kind of on an island and I was isolated and dealing with addiction and alcoholism and things like that. And once I started getting open, honest, and transparent on Facebook, people really started reaching out for help. I was asked to be on a podcast for another recovery channel. That was the first podcast that was on. I was on, and the gentleman asked me, can I use your first and last name, or do you want anonymity? I said, no, I'm a book. Go ahead and put my first and last name on there. Well, I forgot when the podcast was going to drop, and it dropped in March of several years ago. And quite frankly, I woke up one morning on Facebook Messenger and had hundreds of messages from people all around the nation asking me questions about addiction, alcoholism, and so forth. So I knew I had to have some separations on social media. So I was just playing with words one day, discovery and recovery, and different rhymes and things like that. And I came up with the name Suffer to Tougher, and it has meaning because Lord knows I've gone through a lot of suffering in my life, but through the obstacles that life has thrown at me, I certainly became a lot tougher mentally and physically and spiritually along the way. And that's why I came up with the name and created that page, and that's who we decided to run with.
Nice. I love it because almost everybody tries to run away from the suffering part of it.
I mean, I always reference a Dalai Lama quote. Dalai Lama says, "Pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is optional." And I think that's pretty poignant. But I didn't learn that quote until I was already in recovery. So, through the pains in life, I wasn't processing it the right way. It led to the suffering, but through the suffering, there obviously was learning experiences along the way. Totally was able to transform my life, and as a result of it, you become tougher, right?
Yeah, exactly. So how did you guys partner up and everything and meet and decide to start the business together?
So with that one, it's kind of that's actually a really funny story.
It is.
So Marc and I went to high school together. And the funny thing was we had a couple of similar friends and sports and things like that. So we really knew of each other more than we knew each other. So as I like to explain it, we would do kind of the bro head nod in the hallway, like, like we knew each other well enough to like do that. Like we knew it was like just a sign of respect. Like, I know who you are. I know you're cool. You know who I am. I know, he knows I'm cool. And that was it. We never actually had a single conversation in high school.
Nope.
And then fast forward 25 years, and we end up in the same accountability text group with a bunch of our buddies from high school, where they were all just kind of looking for accountability. And Marc was already coaching people in sobriety, and I spent 30 years as a fitness coach. So when it came to staying sober, he'd keep him on task. If it came to, nutrition or exercise, him and I would both chime in because he's big in nutrition and exercise, but he doesn't have the same background that I do. But the funny thing was, we realized that the two of us were the ones giving out all the advice, and we didn't really know each other's background. So one of the guys had recommended that the two of us have a conversation because he saw so many similarities between us and similarities in the types of things that we posted on Facebook, even though we weren't connected. And so after some time, we eventually connected, but not before Marc ended up having this conversation with this gentleman where he's like, I don't understand why you want me to talk to Kelsey. Do you want me to help him or something? Like, because he remembered Kelsey from back in high school who was over 300 pounds and depressed 1 minute, angry the next, getting in fights and whatever. And I was a total misfit because I was just miserable. And so that kind of goes back to, my kind of formative years, slightly after high school, where, I was kind of trying to deal with a struggle between, am I going to take my life or am I going to find a way to live it? And eventually I came around, I started to learn, I started to make progress and turned my whole life around, and then decided that I wanted to become a coach for other people to be able to do the same thing much easier than what it took me. And, when I was doing it, there was no internet. So there was no easy information. It was just try to stay away from food and try to be more active. And that was about as much guidance as I got. And, if you've ever tried to go through either, building muscle, losing fat, losing weight, there's so much information out there, and some of it's good, some of it's garbage, but at least there's information. I didn't have any information. So I wanted to be the hope and inspiration and information for other people. But when Marc and I reconnected, he had no idea that my life had gone through this type of transformation. So he was like thinking that our buddy was trying to get him to be able to coach me. And he's like, but that's not the coaching I do. And he's like, no. Oh, you don't know anything about his backstory now. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me get you caught up. And he gets the two of us on the phone together. And then all of a sudden we're having conversations like, oh, okay, so what kind of stuff do you talk to your people about? And then what kind of stuff do you talk to your people about? And we realized that even though the types of people that we coached came from completely different backgrounds and different struggles, the advice we were giving to each one of them was exactly the same. And it worked. And so that gave us the idea to come up with our book that we appropriately named, along with our brand, Suffer to Tougher. And so that was the first book. And then from the first book, we were getting really strong requests for a second book meant for children who were dealing with mental illness, knowing and hearing my story about how most of my mental illness issues started as a child. And even some of Marc's actually started as a child too, being an impressionable young person in a family with alcoholism, and that, later kind of progressed and, caused some of his struggles as well. So we decided that would be the responsible thing to do, is try and stop the situation from happening before it even does, by giving a resource to these kids before they develop the bad habits that later lend to mental illness later in life. But that's kind of how the whole thing came about.
That's amazing. The one thing I noticed, because I work with a lot of high school age kids too, is there's a lack of confidence with a lot of kids. And I think that was probably one of my biggest downfalls too. I had confidence, but not the confidence you need to be very successful.
I completely agree. Kelsey alluded to my challenges. I had tremendous anxiety, social anxiety. The reason why I didn't talk to him in high school and gave him the head nod is because he was older than me, and I didn't feel comfortable talking to somebody older than me. I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin for a variety of reasons. So there certainly was a lack of confidence there. Honestly, I was the type of kid. I remember my dad telling me when we would order pizza, he'd go, "Marc, order a pizza." I didn't even want to pick up the phone and order a pizza from the local pizza place because I don't like talking on the phone. And my dad would always tell me, "You're never going to survive in the business world. You're never going to, And the ironic part about it is that I ended up dropping out of college, marrying my high school sweetheart, having my first child at the age of 19. And I started in the insurance industry. And the first day on the job, the guy gave me a telephone book. This is 1993. Gave me a telephone book that was about 4 inches tall and said, "Start making phone calls. I'll tell you when it's lunchtime," with no script or anything. So, I had to deal with that and all the anxiety and try to learn the industry. So yeah, I mean, it started young, and then working with people. Kelsey has worked with people. I work with people all day. And when you start talking to them, it's at the place I work at during the day, or if I speak at hospitals to younger individuals and so forth, it doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. I'm a good listener from being in sales for 30 years, and you listen to people's stories. It starts really in their adolescent years, whether it's anxiety or some darker thoughts, maybe because of a divorce situation or a move and they switch schools and they lost all their friends when they switched schools. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And that's the reason why and I'm going to give Kelsey a lot of props here, came out with the second book. But we wrote the second book because we were doing book signings on the first book, and we had teachers coming up to us asking us to do this to address the youth. And we understood exactly what the teachers meant because we both went through our own challenges at young ages as well.
Yeah, and to your point,
Yeah.
Ryan, about confidence, is that the second book is actually titled "You're Not Broken,"
Yeah.
because so many kids think that they are broken in some way.
Yeah. What types of services do you guys provide them?
Go ahead, Kels.
I'm sorry. Can you explain that a little bit?
Like, what types of services do you guys provide? What type of coaching services?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of the coaching that we do, I mean, obviously, Marc's world is specializing in people who are fighting to stay sober or to get sober. And I mean, not to say that he doesn't, all day deal with people who have underlying mental health issues. And that's kind of what led to their becoming an addict, because we both believe that for every addiction, and not just the ones that Marc normally deals with, which might be drugs or alcohol, but the addiction that I was going through was a food addiction. And that's how I got over 300 pounds. My parents were alcoholics as well. And I thought I was doing great staying away from alcohol. And I was like, yeah, see, I'm not following in those footsteps, only to later realize that I just had a different drug of choice. It was food, so whether it's food or shopping or gambling. But everyone that becomes addicted to something like that, it's usually because it's some kind of a way of getting a release from a mental illness that they've got deep down inside, that they're trying to find some other coping mechanism, and it usually ends up in addiction. So that's a lot of the work that Marc does. And for me, I was actually trying to help more people to lose weight like I did, 30 years as a fitness coach specializing in weight loss. And for so many years, I was actually doing it what I consider now to be incorrect. I was trying to help people to lose weight so that they could build their confidence, they could build their self-esteem, so that they could, find their self-worth, instead of helping them find those things first. And then just saying, but in order to be able to feed the brain properly, so that you can have all that inner strength, you have to work on your mind, and your body will follow in suit. So if you're saying, hey, if I'm going to try and get my endorphins up, which I know is going to be good for my mind, I got to get out and exercise, at least go for a walk, get the endorphins up. In order to feel better about myself, I need to get my serotonin up. I need to make sure that I'm not constantly going for a dopamine fix. I got to make sure I'm getting the proper rest and relieving stress to get my cortisol levels down. You do those things, and all of a sudden you can build muscle, you can burn fat, you can lose weight, and your body starts performing like the machine that it's meant to be. Just like food, as Marc says all the time, eat your food like medicine. You should be eating food for fuel, not fun. And if you start really living that life, everything else will take care of itself. But it starts with a mind shift, because you're never going to follow a diet if you don't change your mind first.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So that's basically what I've done for 30 years. And now I attack it more with a mindset approach. And Marc, if you want to expand on that for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we're just mind, body, and rhythm. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But as far as mindset goes, positive affirmations, glass half full versus half empty. If you're going through a perceived negative situation or a tough time in your life, what's the positive I can take out of it? Just complete reframing of the mind. I'm really big into that, and when you talk to people, it's interesting because I'm very cognizant of the conversation that we're having, and they'll talk about like the struggles they're going through and how bad of times there are right now in their household and so forth. And but they'll mention like two or three little positive things while they're telling me all the negative. And I shift the conversation to, well, let's look at the two or three positive things that you just mentioned in this conversation, and let's build on that. Because it's scientifically and medically proven, specifically with the positive affirmations, that that'll naturally increase your serotonin levels and your dopamine levels by thinking positively. The body part, yes, I'm a big believer in nutrition. Eat your food as medicine, not for pleasure. I look back at my days of using, honestly, everything I did reeked of depression right down to my diet. I mean, I was a high trans fat guy, fast food, sugar, ice cream, cake, you name it, everything they probably shouldn't put in your body. I did put in my body. The truth be told is I actually gained a lot of weight, developed a neck and back issue, and they really couldn't figure out exactly what was wrong with me because I had two conflicting test results. So I went to a pain management doctor, and that's how I got introduced to prescription pain pills, and that's how I became an opiate addict, quite frankly. But there was something else going inside, so I probably was eating my feelings as well. So when I got sober, I mean, I looked at the foods that you're supposed to put in your body that's going to drive your serotonin as opposed to deplete your serotonin. I had to do a complete change in my diet, but I didn't change it all at once. It was just making like one simple change, like cutting pop out of my diet, because that aspartame in pop not only is it cancer causing, but it wreaks havoc on your serotonin and can cause a depressed state. I mean, that was the first change that I made. Dopamine, your high protein diet will actually increase your dopamine levels, therapeutically. The whole endorphin thing that Kelsey was talking about, which is part of the body as well, that's the exercise thing. And the thing about endorphins is the word endorphin is made up of two words. Okay, the ENDO comes from the word endogenous, and the RPHIN comes from the word morphine. Endogenous means from within. So you put them together, it's morphine from within. I mean, that's really what endorphin means. Your body makes a painkiller. Well, I'm a painkiller or opiate addict in recovery. Painkillers work really good for physical pain, but quite frankly, the reason why there's a crisis out there and the reason why they're so addictive is they work even better for emotional pain. So it made sense to me because that Dalai Lama quote, pain in life is inevitable. In order for me to go through that pain in life and not go through suffering like I did before, it made sense to get my natural painkillers up. So exercise definitely played a critical component in it. And this is the education that we provide the individuals that we're working with on a daily basis. And then the other thing too is like with oxytocin. Oxytocin is the fourth feel good chemical in the brain. That's a relationship hormone. So a lot of times you're dealing with people that are going through a strained relationship or a divorce, and the divorce rate in this country is 52%. Their oxytocin depletes, leaves them into a depressed state because it affects the serotonin and dopamine. So we always talk about, paying it forward in the recovery world. The whole 12 step of AA is living a life of service. Well, by paying it forward, you're giving back, you're feeling good about yourself, you're developing relationships with other people. That's going to naturally elevate your oxytocin. So everything that we coach is really based off those feel good chemicals in the brain. And the rhythm, really, quite frankly, is just getting it to become a habit and eventually become a lifestyle. I believe that you need to have a recovery lifestyle in order to attain long-term sobriety and to keep your mental health in check.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
so
other
true.
things. Yeah. And then other things we talk about, is, progress over perfection. We're big on, because too often people are trying to bite off more than they can chew. And honestly, if you just take the next right step, often that leads to the next one and to the next one and to the next one. So, but too often people are like, okay, so I gotta exercise. I gotta eat better. I gotta sleep better. And it's a complete life overhaul. And over time, yes, but all at once, you're setting yourself up for failure.
No,
Yeah.
I make
How do you
very
keep
clear
them?
of that. Sorry, go ahead.
How do you keep them keep that positive like mindset when they're trying to bite off more than they can chew? Like, hey, how do you get them to keep talking positive to themselves? Because we all know that when you fail, I mean that instant shame and like that part of your brain, like, man, I should have done better.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
It's a lot of conversations, a lot of reminding them. I mean, as an example, and I do not like this word, and we do not use this word in the book, but a relapse. In the recovery world, they refer to it as a relapse. We call it a setback. And I'll have an individual call me up. It just happened a couple weeks ago. He was crying his eyes out because he had a bad weekend and he had a setback. And then you slow down the conversation. Say, okay, you had a setback. It is what it is. We can't change it. But what was the run up? What's the learning experience? What can we take out of this? Because Lord knows I'm not a one and done type of guy. I mean, I had multiple setbacks, but each setback along the way, there was a learning experience that gave me an experience. So if I'm in a similar situation before, I know what not to do and what to do, and focus on, okay, well, this is what happened in this particular situation. Now you learn from it. Now, if you're ever in the situation again, we know how to handle it differently. Now let's get back on it and work towards your sobriety again and work towards your recovery lifestyle again. So it's a lot of conversations like that. I'm a big believer, that when you're going through your tougher times in life, that's where your growth occurs. I think your greatest opportunity to grow is through the tougher times in life. I'm evidence of that. The individuals I've worked with are evidence of that. So I tell people all the time, you got to welcome the tough times. You got to welcome the challenges. You got to welcome the pain. And if you do that and you learn from those experiences, it's going to make you a better overall human being on the other end, as it has for me.
And then if I could add to that, and then also when I'm coaching people, generally I let them be a part of the process. I don't want them to think that I'm telling them what they should do, because that gets thrown back at the coach, because a good coach says, what is it that you think you can do that you would appreciate if you could do, but 100% you feel like you can do it. And whatever that step is, I'm like, hey, is that going for a walk for 10 minutes? Yeah, I mean, I can do that. It's like, well, would you feel accomplished if you do that every day for a week? Well, yeah, but they might choose something else, or they might say, actually, that sounds great if I could do that. All right, and you can commit to me right now you're going to do that. So they're a part of the process. So therefore, they can't come back to you later and say, it just wasn't reasonable. Really? Because you're the one who came up with it. So I do a lot of that, and just so it doesn't have to be big steps. It can be a small step, but as long as they're moving in a direction forward, they're always going to feel good about that. They're going to get that hit of dopamine that they want. They're going to feel accomplished. They're going to check a box. They're going to get a gold star in their brain, and you're going to be able to keep moving them forward. You just have to set them up for success, but you have to do it using their own mindset in where they are. And we're always about meeting somebody where they're at. And then, they're, not comparing them to anybody else that we're working with, letting them compare themselves to anybody else in the world. They're comparing themselves to the person that they were yesterday and who they expect themselves to be tomorrow. That's it.
Yeah. How do our daily habits and mindset shape the life we ultimately want to create?
Well, I mean, there's an old saying out there, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're correct, right? I mean,
And that quote built Ford Motor Company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. It absolutely is true. And when I'm talking to somebody, I'm very cognizant again of their words. Like, I don't want to hear, I'm going to try to get sober. Because if you're going to say you're going to try to get sober, you're giving yourself no, we're going to get through this together, and you're going to get sober. I mean, that's the mindset that you have. You are going to come out on the other end living a sober and recovery lifestyle. I mean, and I'm sure you work the same way with your clients, Kelsey, like when it comes to like the weight loss and that. And I make very clear, that with me, it started with simple steps that Kelsey was alluding to. Like I said, the first dietary change that I did was cut pop out of my diet. That was it. The first form of exercise that I had in probably 20 plus years, 25 plus years was walking. I mean, that's all it was walking. And early on, a win because I was going through like a post-acute withdrawal syndrome from the opiates. A win early on was just to walk around the block. And then you graduate to let's go to the lake and let's do a lap around the lake. And then you start slowly, gradually basically getting more steps in per day. And I always joke around when I speak at the hospitals, because then I looked at my phone one day. I was going to download a Steps app, and I found out that the Steps app was there all along to track my steps. I just never looked at it. And then I started getting, 10,000 steps per day, and then slowly made it back into the gym and started working out, because, people look at me now and they probably look at me the same exact way as I looked at that gentleman that spoke at the hospital. Because when that gentleman spoke at the hospital, the reason why he provided so much hope and inspiration is he was sharing a story, and his story was chaos. He was a heroin addict from the south side of Chicago. He was in and out of treatment like 20 times. He had a 17-year-old with heroin, grew up in a gang-infested community, had a lot of trauma, with addiction in his family, lost relatives to drive-by shootings. I mean, he had a lot of pain in his life, and as a result, had a lot of suffering. But when he stood there and presented at the hospital, I remember thinking to myself, there is no friggin' way this guy was a drug addict and lived this life. But he did. He was dressed nice. He was physically fit, clean cut. I mean, he had it going on. And now I go speak at the hospitals, and I actually carry before and after pictures, because I'm not allowed to bring my phone in there for privacy reasons. And I'll show, this is what I look like in active addiction. This is what I look like in 1 year. This is what, and you obviously can see what I look like now, because I want people to understand it's a progression, but as long as we're making progress, as Kelsey alluded to earlier, that's the name of the game, and we're just going to continue to build. We're not going to become satisfied or complacent, because complacency is going to kill the momentum, and satisfaction is the first step to failure. We want to continue to build every single day and keep moving the needle a little bit each day.
Yeah, 1% better each day.
Yep.
That's it.
And early on, when somebody's trying to make some initial changes, I don't care if it's 0.00000001%. As long as it's in the right direction, we'll take the friggin' win, right? Eventually,
Yeah.
it's going to be 1% per day.
Yeah, I also found out, like, simplifying everything for somebody, like, hey, I know this is the end goal, but we got to start by, like, something easy. Hey, why don't we drink like a gallon of water? Why don't we start something easy that we know you can do, and we can gain momentum?
Exactly.
And then when they do that, they feel good about themselves, and that's going to affect that brain chemistry. It's almost like a SMART goal approach from SMART recovery meetings.
Yeah. What are some practical ways to build resilience when life feels overwhelming?
I mean, one step at a time. I mean, it's, you just have to. I mean, for one thing, I'm a big believer in habit stacking. So as you alluded to before, picking something real simple and then just stacking it on the next, like every 2 weeks, something different. If it's really small, then maybe, once a week, every, for, the first 4 to 6 weeks, if it's something that you can tell they've really got it down, they're really feeling good about themselves. And, you talk to them and they just feel like maybe things are getting a little stagnant, or maybe the thing that you asked them to do, or that you guys decided on, maybe you felt like it was too easy, like maybe they were already kind of doing it already, so you're afraid that you're not challenging them enough. So it really is kind of a case by case basis, but it's just trying to put your best foot forward. And then the one thing we haven't talked about right now is, yet so far, is sharing with people. Whether it's one person, whether it's a community, like a group like AA, like Marc talked about before, but you got to be able to get that stuff out there and get some feedback, even if it's just, hey man, you're doing okay. So, I mean, it's really important to be able to talk to people about what's going on the inside and not trying to hold it all in. So that would be another thing there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing that I would add to that, and I'm a big mindfulness type of guy, living in the present. And I think that's important if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel the pressures of life. It's kind of the old saying, yesterday's history, tomorrow's mystery, but today's a gift. That's why they call it the present. Let's just focus on today and let's control the controllables today. What can we control today?
Amen.
Yeah. Awesome. What role does accountability play in creating lasting personal growth?
It's huge. I mean, and that can be somebody's own personal accountability, whether it's their tracking, their journaling, or if they have a coach or they have a support system, whether it's just even one person that they talk to and they say, hey, this is what I'm working on right now. Can you, hold me accountable? And that other person goes, sure, but can you hold me accountable to this? Great. There's your support buddy. All right. So it doesn't really have to be a coach. So, I mean, we're not necessarily here to sell coaching or to sell therapy. We're selling support systems. Find someone that you feel comfortable talking to, someone that you trust with your feelings, and whoever that is, hold each other accountable. And it makes a huge difference, because if all of a sudden, the only person that's disappointed in you is you, it's pretty easy to go, well, I can just restart next week. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. As they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. So part of that plan to succeed is get other people involved. I mean, we post pictures of ourselves, when we're working out at the gym or whatever, just to be like, hey, this week we're really focusing on this. And, we do it ourselves. So if we're comfortable enough as coaches to say we're works in progress, then other people should feel comfortable about it too. And that's one of the main reasons why we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier about the walking, and then I said I slowly got in the gym. Let me tell you how I slowly got into the gym. So a good friend of mine, probably one of my best friends from seventh grade, got wind of my story. And at that particular time, I still couldn't drive because I had a pending DUI. And he reached out to me and he's like, we're going to get back in the gym. And he volunteered to start picking me up every single morning at like 5:30 in the morning. And again, as I shared earlier, I was going through that a post-acute withdrawal syndrome that can last up to a year once you get sober. So, I mean, literally your body feels like you just went 12 rounds of Mike Tyson. I mean, your body is just so beat up. I mean, it was hard to get out of bed and just go on those walks, as I was alluding to earlier. But this dude showed up every friggin' morning, laying on the friggin' horn, calling my friggin' cell phone. There were days I didn't want to get out of the bed, but he was there every single day, making sure I got to the gym. And guess what? I started working out. I started feeling better. The post-acute withdrawal syndrome certainly didn't last up to a year like the doctors told me that it was going to. It actually lasted a lot less than that. And I think it lasted a lot less than that because I was forcing myself to get my body active and get those endorphins up. And I think that helped me with my post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And that's really where the idea came with this group text that Kelsey was alluding to earlier when we first became aware of each other again after 25 plus years. And that's how we got into that group. I mean, we all were motivating each other, with gym pictures and meal preps and things like that. And I mean, I still do that, with the people that I work with on a regular basis. Like when I get done with the gym, I mean, I'll send them like a little motivational text and sometimes a pic, and they'll send me a pic back, and we hold each other accountable. They hold me accountable just like I hold them accountable. It's like a community, and that's what I love.
Yeah. How can someone find that right community of people to hold them accountable? Because I was in recovery too, and a lot of my friends at one point were not good for me. So if you got other people here listening to that, where can they find that right group of people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations
Yeah.
on a couple of things. Obviously, your own sobriety, and probably even more impressively, breaking free from the environment that was keeping you in that mindset. So, I mean, it's not easy to say, you know what, I love you guys. Literally, I love you guys, but you're not good for me. And to break free of that, it is one of the hardest things you could possibly do. I would say it's probably as hard as actually getting sober is itself. I mean, I wouldn't know specifically. I haven't had to go through that, but I can only imagine it's got to be almost equally as hard. So congrats on that. But to your question, we actually have a community group called Stronger Together with S2T on Facebook. And that's the kind of stuff that we do there. We, exchange, conversations, commitments, goals, achievements, that type of thing. And we're only going to keep growing that. And, but that's separate from our actual business page, which is S2T Nation, which that's kind of more what's going on with the company. But we specifically have that community group just so people can get that accountability and they can share their wins and, share in other people's wins and get motivated through what other people have going on. And the idea is for it to be infectious and supportive.
Yeah, and I would like
Yeah.
to add, it's not all addiction and alcoholism and mental health. I mean, there are individuals on there that struggle with diabetes. There's individuals on there that struggle with MS. I mean, you see all walks of life on there, and really, to be honest with you, they're using these same principles in the book. I mean, the book was designed as a resource to help people struggle with mental health and some form of addiction. But honestly, the book is in the self-help category. So we've had people, one person in particular I'm thinking of, that really had some bad diabetes, had an A1C, I think close to 10, was told by the time he was 55 he could possibly be an amputee. He started working the principles in the book. He's down significant weight loss. His hemoglobin A1C is right, it's under 5, I believe, and the doctors are talking about taking him off all of diabetes medications, and the doctors are asking, "Well, what the hell are you doing?" And really, it's a lot of the nutrition things that we talk about, but it's also a lot of the exercise that he's doing on a daily basis, and he lives far away from where we're at, but it's all just through texting and this page that Kelsey's talking about, where he gets held accountable, and then he honestly, I call him Mr. Reliable. I mean, he motivates me and holds me accountable just as much as we hold him accountable. I mean, really, it's a community platform. We all benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, this guy even posts his pictures when he's working out on vacation or on a business trip. He finds a gym, gets there, does it, posts his pictures. So when Marc says Mr. Consistency, you see where he gets his name. And he's not the only one. That's just one example. But to Marc's point, it's basically the book is for anybody who struggles with anything and is just looking to not get stuck. Because we all struggle with stuff, but some of us get stuck longer than others, and some of us never really recover. So it's basically for the people who either get stuck too long or don't want to get stuck at all and just want to keep pushing forward. It's, as we often like to talk about thresholds, you reach these thresholds in life and you don't know how to, get over them, get around them, get through them. And literally, it's just the consistency that is going to allow you to move forward. But people keep on thinking they have to rewrite their whole playbook. It's like, no, you just have to find a way to sustain yourself. And Marc, why don't you share the buffalo and the cow story? This is great.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with that story at all?
Yeah.
Right or no?
One runs away from the storm, the other one runs to it. But the buffalo was the one that runs to it, right?
Yep. That's when I talk to people, or if I'm talking at the treatment facility, I says, get ready to become, well, I kind of swear. I said, get ready to become enough in buffalo. That's what I tell them.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's absolutely true. But since Marc's the one who tells the story, I didn't want to steal it from him.
Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah. How do you help people get unstuck? Because a lot of that's fear that's keeping people there. They know what to do, but they just won't do it.
Yeah, but what's it fear of? It's fear of change. I mean, that's really what I think it is. It's fear of change. And I mean, change in everyday life is scary. I get that. Yeah. I mean, whether it's at work and it's a new computer system at work, or you go through a management change at work and you get some new leadership, right? As a society, we don't like change. That's really what it comes down to. So, again, kind of alluding to what Kelsey talked about earlier, and I'll use the example when I was in treatment. When I was in treatment, you're told you got to change. But really, when you're in treatment, you're told you come to the realization you got to change everything. And I've spoken about this so many times because it's like, your diet's wrong. You got a lack of exercise. You got to get some alcohol and drugs. It's like, where the hell do I begin? Like, I wanted to run out of the room when they started talking about change. But that's when you got to practice that mindfulness, living in the moment, controlling the controllables, and just pick one thing to focus on initially and just try to make a little progress and then acknowledge the progress and then keep moving forward by adding something onto the plate. I think that as a society, we look at the person in the mirror and we expect perfection. we think that we should be better than where we're at right now. We should be better financially, whatever it might be, right? But better shape, whatever it might be. But when we're talking to our friend, we don't expect perfectionism. And I always remind people, you're never going to talk to somebody more than the person in the mirror. It's all self-talk. So we have to give ourselves grace. We have to understand, that we're not perfect. We're just looking for some progress. We're looking to move the needle a little bit and just build on that progress. Because if you tell somebody they got to change all these factors in their life, they're going to be like me in treatment. They're going to want to run.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of conversations. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I mean, you can actually, it's kind of funny because you can tie it back to some of the stories that we heard as children, right? The little engine that could, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Or how about the tortoise and the hare? Tortoise just kept going. The hare was screwing around and the tortoise eventually persevered. So it's really as simple as that. Just keep moving forward. And don't allow yourself to get stuck in fear and doubt, and just remain hopeful that as long as you stay the course and you just keep moving forward, that eventually you're going to get there. And don't worry about how long it takes to get there. Again, as we say, progress over perfection. And it's like Marc said, it's all mindset. If you appreciate the journey because you're stacking the wins, you're definitely going to get there. And kind of to that point, we actually have a summit coming up next month called the Transformation Gap Summit. And that's actually kind of what you're talking about. The transformation gap we refer to as the point that you go from awareness and all the way through to perseverance and to get to where you're trying to go. But it's getting from that awareness and feeling stuck and trying to find your way to get to where you're trying to go. And that's that gap. And so we're going to have over 60 speakers coming to this summit. It's going to last for 6 days. It's from September 24th to the 29th. And it's going to be 60 speakers talking about whether it's their live life experience, whether it's the coaching that they do. We're probably going to have some clinicians and just people all talking about how to navigate the transformation gap. And we are so looking forward to that. And I'll definitely get you links and stuff that you can, put out to people. But it's a free summit. No charge. The talks are all going to be good for 24 hours before we move to the next day's talks. So you can attend all 6 days for free. And it's just everyone just sharing stories. It's going to be epic. Nothing like it of its kind.
Awesome. So what's the number one takeaway you want people to get from your book?
I mean, for me, transformation is possible. And if there's a pulse, there's hope. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You got to remember from where I come from. I mean, I basically was dead a couple times and revived. I mean, I overdosed a number of times. I shouldn't be sitting here on this podcast with you, so, transformation change is absolutely possible. It's possible with the steps that are laid out in the book. And, you can pretty much overcome, in my opinion, the challenges of life in a much healthier way by following the steps of the book. Kelsey, I'm sure you probably got a different take.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I just had to boil the whole book down to one message, it would just be your suffering doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can become the foundation of your new strength.
Yeah, love it. So can you get this off on Amazon or?
Currently, we're actually selling off of our website because we're using a different source called Lulu. And so if you just go to our website, suffertotougher.org, O-R-G. And for the 2, for Suffer to Tougher, it's T-O, not the number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll drop all that in the show notes and everything too.
Thank you.
What led you guys to start podcasting?
Honestly, it's just we want to help as many people as we can, and podcasting is a great way to get your message out to lots of people. And it really is just simply that. It just gives us a platform to be able to talk to audiences that we can't otherwise reach. Marc and I both work probably 70 to 80 hours a week on average, and we help a lot of people. But even if we're helping people in the tens or even the hundreds, podcasts, if you work at it, it could be thousands, tens of thousands, and possibly millions. So it's just the best way for us to reach as many people as we can to get people the help that they need.
Yeah. What's the name of your guys' podcast?
It is Rebuild and Fulfill.
And what's the premise and what's it about for the listeners?
Basically, people sharing their stories of resilience. We occasionally will have a one-off. We'll maybe have a clinician, or we'll have somebody with kind of a background as opposed to a live life experience. But I would say 90% of the guests that we bring on and 90% of what we talk about is more the lived life experience, not necessarily the book learning that comes with a clinician. We really like to hit people in the ways that we feel qualified to. And that's just to say, we've been through it. We came out the other side. So wherever you're at, we can relate to what you're going through, and we can be a support system for you. And we're going to give you so many stories of inspiration from people that we meet through the podcast. It's been such an amazing experience. It's been transformative even to us, because we're bringing these guests on and we're getting hope and inspiration from the people that we bring on every bit as much as we're trying to give hope and inspiration to other people. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I think it hits a lot harder too when it's more of when they actually went through the pain and the suffering and transformed their lives.
And the thing about it is you got all different types of stories. You do have some recovery stories, from alcohol and addiction, but you got people battling some sicknesses to some challenges in their life. But, when I talk to people, I always remind them, I said, don't pay attention to differences, always focus on similarities. And when we're interviewing these individuals, that's the principles that I always use. Let's focus on the similarities. And there are so many similarities depending on what they're overcoming in life when it comes to mindset and positive thinking, what I call brain set resets, and changing the narrative in your brain, and what's the positive, what's the learning experience that I can take out of the situation that just makes them so much stronger as a human being. And if you took the time and actually watched all the different stories, you would see all those similarities in the same theme, repeated, although everybody's story is completely different. And that's what I love about it, because I'm a big mindset guy.
Yeah.
And when people share their stories, it just is another way of helping to end the stigma around mental health. And we talk about that a lot, because to us, mental health is like using the word diet. Diet refers to what it is that you eat, good or bad. Yeah. So is mental health. You can be in a positive, good mental health. You can be in a bad mental health. You can be somewhere in between, and it ebbs and flows all the time. So when people think of mental health, they think, they've got mental health issues. No, everyone's got mental health. So we need to accept that sometimes people are struggling and other times they're thriving, and we just have to be supportive of one another instead of attaching a label to mental health that it must be something bad, because it's really not. But we, as Marc said, we grow the most from the adversity in our lives. So honestly, in those challenge days, we have an opportunity to grow that didn't exist when life was easy. So I appreciate all the mental health struggles that I have had, because if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. I wouldn't be helping people that are struggling, because I had to go through it in order to be able to help it.
Yeah, that's so true. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so as we said, the website, Suffer to Tougher, you can hit a contact tab on that website and reach us anytime. Also, our email couldn't be simpler. It's suffertotougher@gmail.com. And so you can reach us that way. On Facebook, on either one of our profiles, and LinkedIn, we're both there. Suffer to Tougher is on LinkedIn, and S2T Nation on Facebook, and Stronger Together with S2T. And then obviously, as far as all the major platforms with our podcast, Rebuild and Fulfill, we do the audio and visual version for YouTube. But then if you want to check us out on, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, Spotify, all the major platforms, we're there.
Awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
Yeah, we're really focused on that summit. We would love for people to come out and enjoy that. That's why we're making it a free event. And like I said, 60 speakers. If you can't find some valuable information in those talks over the course of 6 days, and you can, for all the people that go, how am I going to listen to 60 talks in 6 days? I get it. You could have a few that the description and title resonates with you and you're like, hey, I'm going to check that one out. Or there could be so many that you're like, hey, is there any way that we can get a recording of this? We are going to be offering a VIP package for the lifetime recordings. But as I said, to just come and watch some of the talks and get some valuable information is completely free. We're actually even offering a diagnostic that is available right now. If you just even joined the registration page for free, you get the free diagnostic, which that is 75 questions. I know that sounds daunting, but it took me 12 minutes. I took it myself. And 75 questions, that's really going to help push you in a direction of this is what you're struggling with and this is what you need to work on, where some of the other things in your life, you might be doing okay, which also helps lead you to believe or to understand what talks you might want to pay attention to during those 6 days, because they might be talking specifically about the one area that you seem to be struggling based upon the diagnostic. So we're really trying to make this as easy for people to get some great information over the course of the summit.
Nice.
I'll just add that, we think that mental health and physical health are just as important as to each other. And we go for physical checkups every year, but nobody really does a mental health checkup on an annual basis. That's the whole point of the diagnostic. And, this conversation about everybody has mental health, this came up in May during May Mental Health Awareness Month. And I heard an unbelievable statistic this past May. And what I heard was from the early signs of somebody exhibiting their first symptom from either anxiety or PTSD or some type of depressive episode to the time they actually seek out help and guidance, 11 and a half years go by. And during that 11 and a half years, what do you think happens during 11 and a half years? Some suffering.
Yeah.
Some bad habits are picked up.
Isn't that amazing, Ryan?
What's that?
It's insane.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. That's a lot of years to go off the rails.
Well, you know what? I used to think that when I first heard that stat, I'm like, that cannot be. But then I started thinking about myself. My first panic attack that I had literally was in sixth grade. So what are you, 12 years old, 11 years old in sixth grade? The first time that I ever talked to a professional, okay, and got my diagnosis, I was 43 years old and I was in the weeds of alcoholism and addiction. So that was 32 years. It's insane because I grew up in a household of man up, don't show your feelings. It's a sign of weakness, all that baloney. It's a sign of strength to ask for help. It's a sign of strength to ask for guidance. We want people to do these checkups on an annual basis. And we don't want people to go through some of the suffering that myself went through and as well as Kelsey went through back in the day.
Yeah. That is so true, though, right there, that, it's looked at as a weakness. Because I used to believe the same thing that I was taught, and you just bottle everything up and eventually you explode.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happens. And then you hear the stories over and over and over again. And that's the point I want to drive home, is that it's a sign of strength to ask for help. We have to end the stigma, and get people educated when it comes to this stuff because it's not going away. I mean, I got sober in 2020. The world kind of took a step back in 2020 with COVID. I was part of programs and going to recovery group meetings pre-COVID. I've seen what's happened immediately after COVID and the snowball effect. Here we are 6 years after, and there's no end in sight. I mean, Kelsey and I talk about this on a daily basis. The stuff that I see on a daily basis is getting worse as we progress. And we have to address this as a society. And it starts with normalizing these conversations.
Yeah, so true. All right, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
You want me to take that first?
If you want to, that's fine.
Sure.
I know what I'm going to say, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, just don't confuse the season that you're in with the life that you're going to have. It doesn't have to be that way. When you're in the middle of adversity, it's easy to believe that this is just who you are now, and that you'll always feel this way. But that's really true. So the second thing is to stop trying to solve your whole life today. We kind of talked about that. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do is just take the next right step. So, don't bite off more than you can chew, just the next one, and concentrate on that. And then, as we already said as well, don't do it alone. So one of the biggest lies adversity tells us is that we're the only one that's struggling, and that asking for help, as we already said, it's a sign of weakness. No, it's not. It's definitely not. You really need to show true strength to say, I'm not okay. And I know that that's become cliche in the past couple of years, and I don't really care that it has, because it's actually a step forward that, we're saying that now. And I'm okay with saying I'm not okay. And I think everybody else should be too, because you're not going to get help until someone knows that what you're really feeling deep down inside.
Yeah.
Got a real simple answer with that. Your current situation is not your final destination, as long as you take the right steps by asking for help.
There you go.
And get the proper guidance.
Love it. Nice advice right there. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your amazing stories and insight with all of us.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is to go through the fire.
Absolutely.